And now a little story from the Appleseed.
I have a friend named Braswell. We played baseball together against each other, recreational baseball in Newton County. We weren't licensed enough to be Little League. We did it ourselves. There's a town that abuts Covington, Georgia. It's called Porterdale. It's the last intact textile mill town in Georgia. Porterdale, Georgia. Porterdale, Georgia, and Charlotte, North Carolina used to look exactly alike. Charlotte doesn't look like it used to. And Porterdale looks like it did 100 years ago. Braswell's fourth-generation mill people. When the textile company built the mill, they built the stores, the streets, the ball field. They had a full-size ball field. They had all the churches, all of the businesses, and all of the homes where the people who worked in the mills lived. The company literally owned the town. Ergo, if you worked for the mill, you were kind of going to work for the mill for a long time. Braswell's grandmother went to our church, First Methodist Church in Covington. In '68, it became the United Methodist Church. And on Wednesdays, Braswell and I played together. What we did was I would ride my bike to my school. Braswell would ride his bike to his school, and then my mama would pick him up from his house and bring him over to our house. We would have supper, and we would do our homework, and then at 7 o'clock, we would go to choir practice. And that's one of those times that Braswell was convinced that Marguerite is psychic. It actually began when he got his tonsils out. Back in the day, young people, when you were 8 years old, you got your tonsils out, whether you wanted to or not. Marguerite was a surgical nurse at the time. The mill had a little 8-person, little 8-bed hospital, and Braswell had his tonsils taken out. They didn't have a television in his home. He didn't know a lot of things that you would know about having your tonsils taken out. There's some cultural references to that. All he knew is when he came out of anesthesia, Marguerite was there. She was holding his foot. She had the talent. She could hold a kid's foot without tickling him. And she was waiting for him to wake up. And he looked up. He was so hungry, so thirsty. His throat was burning, and there was only one thing he wanted. And Marguerite looked down at him and said, "You want some ice cream." How did she know? And ever since that time, Braswell was utterly convinced that Marguerite knew everything about him and could read his mind. We played baseball against Porterdale. Porterdale did not, the parents didn't, a lot of them didn't have cars, so they had their own team. The Covington teams all mixed up, but Porterdale had their own teams, and they were so bad, they took on the moniker, the worst moniker that any team could take on. They were the Porterdale Yankees. It was serious. We loved those Wednesdays. We went to, choir practice together. One time, one of those Wednesdays in the spring, I had told Braswell that we could play with my Mattel thing maker when he came to my house. Now, you people are too young to know what a Mattel thing maker is, and your parents probably had decent parents that didn't allow such a thing in your home. This is what a Mattel thing maker is. Look it up on the internet later so you'll know I'm not making this up. It was a 350-degree hot plate that you plugged into the wall. Under strict adult supervision? Of course not. What did you do with that hot plate? You put in lead aluminum molds. What were the molds of? They were roaches and spiders and snakes and creepy crawlers. In fact, they were literally called creepy crawlers, registered trademark. You know what I'm talking about. You remember this? Yes, right. And it was a boy toy. Well, the girls had little hippie things. They had daisies and stuff. It didn't really sell. It was a boy toy because, what you would do is you would pour plastic goop. It's called plastic goop. It was polyvinyl chloride in a liquid state. You'd pour that into the mold, and it would smoke a little bit, and you'd hang over it and smell it, y'all. I was driving. I had a gig. In South. I had every library in South Louisiana I've played. That's why I'm a storyteller and not a comedian, because I play in more libraries and churches, and there isn't a 3-drink minimum. As opposed to comedy. All right, focus. But I was driving there. It's called the Chemical Corridor. It's where all the refineries are, right? And this green smoke came in through my air conditioner, and I rolled down the window, and I stuck my head out, and childhood. I was so excited. We were going to play. We did our homework. We were going to play with my thing maker. It was raining on this particular day, and we were going to play with my rain. And I was out of plastic. That horrible, horrible empty bottle. Oh man, sound. And we were bored, and we couldn't play in the rain. We didn't want to do anything else. We had an hour before a choir practice, and I went to my mama, and she was watching something on television. I said, "We're bored. We're bored. We're bored. We're bored." You know what we are? Braswell, say what we are. Now, Braswell's an obedient kid. He respected adults. He said, I don't know. Braswell said he's bored. I'm blaming Braswell. My mama said, Braswell said no such thing. I said, yeah, he did. We're bored. Mama, we're bored. Mama, we're bored. Mama, we're bored. My mama said, fine. And she had an idea, something that she did when she was a little girl in her big house where she grew up. She went into her room. She came out with some baby powder. Now, the house had oak floors. It's a 1948 came-on-a-train car house, one of those post-World War II places. So the floors were oak, but the rest of the house was asbestos and cardboard. It was heated with a floor furnace. Does anybody, y'all don't have these because it gets cold here. A floor furnace heated the whole house. It was 4 feet long, 3 feet wide, and a little bitty, 5-foot hallway, or 4.5 foot high. I mean, it had like 6 inches on either. I can't do the math part. 6 inches on either side of the floor furnace. It heated the whole house. It just hot thing. So when you went around it to the bathroom or anything, you had to go past the floor furnace. You had to dance around it. If you stepped on it, you would tread into your feet. And I did when I was a kid. It gave me more traction when I ran barefoot. So the floor furnace is about 5 feet from the kitchen, and that was the running area. And in front of the floor furnace, my mama sprinkled baby powder. She opened up her bedroom door. She sprinkled baby powder there. She did this when she was a kid. She got in trouble, so she thought that I should have a better childhood. She said, watch this. And she ran. Now, she was not 8 years old anymore. She was about 43, right? And you had to have enough momentum to jump over the furnace. So when she jumped over the furnace, she slid. That is the correct verb, a lot in the tradition of my people. And she slid. Well, she wasn't 8 years old anymore. She was 43. She was like, she couldn't stop. She couldn't stop. And then into her room, into her bedroom, she kept going. And she tried to stop, and bam, her elbow went into the drywall. I did not say sheetrock. I said drywall. Drywall is a 1/4 inch of cardboard and glue. And it made a hole. And we were silent. And then my mama said, hachi-chachi. Now, when my mama said hachi-chachi, it was good news, man. That was, man, she's like, whatever. That means, oh boy. It means Yahoo. It means we're not in trouble. She pulled out a magic marker. I wasn't going to be in trouble, but she did it anyway. She pulled out a magic marker. She circled the hole with a magic marker, and she put her name, Tootsie, Miss Tootsie. My mama's name is Tootsie. You're laughing at my mama's name. She said, Braswell, you're the guest. It's your turn. Oh, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. That's the kind of thing Braswell would die for if it happened in his house. I said, I want to go. She said, all right, go. So I got into the kitchen. I did a long jump over the furnace, and I slid. And I wasn't going to be outdone by my mama, so when I got to the wall, bam, I hit it with my fist. I knocked a hole in the wall, man, about that big, about 6 or 7 inches wide. And my mama said, all right. And she circled that. But Andy, Braswell, it is your turn. You have to do this. Braswell is obedient. He's going to do what the grown-up tells him. He said, all right. Well, you had to have enough momentum to get over the furnace. So even if he was going to try to run slow, he wasn't, because he would grill his feet. And he ran, and he slid. And he was a big, beefy guy, and he slid, and he tried to slow down. And his shoulder went into the wall, poof, and it hit the softest pot. It didn't make a hole, but it made a big, big cracked area. Mama said, Braswell, yours is the biggest. Circle that. Braswell. Years ago, when my mama passed away, I lost the toss with my sisters, and I got the house. Of course, I've papered it now with Katie Dee wallpaper. And that's schmoozing. That's Carmen Didi's daughter. And but I found this old mirror frame. So there in that mirror frame, on some dusty old goldenrod paint, are 3 holes with those magic marker names. I am that neurotically sentimental. Well, the next week after we did the slud, or the sludding, I don't know the past tense of slud. Oh, sludded. Make note of that later. If that was fun, you know when you're a kid and something's fun and you want to do it bigger than the time you did it before? I had this idea. It got warm and we rode our bikes. What we do, when Braswell came to my house, there was a bike that lived at my house. That was his bike. And we would ride through the cemetery to choir practice. And then on the way back, it was dark, and my mama would say, make sure you go through the cemetery. We had those lights with the generators that went on the car, on the tire. Remember those things? Woo! Slow down your bike, but the faster you go, the brighter your light. My mom made sure that we went through the cemetery because there were no cars. Please pay attention. My mama made me ride my bike at night through the cemetery. Just want to make sure you're there for me. All right. Well, I had the idea. I put some baby powder in my backpack, and we went to choir practice early. It was a pretty day, and I said, Mama, we're going to go ride bikes before choir practice. We had had supper. We had done our homework. My mama said, fine. I said, we got to go straight to the church. The church was never locked. This is why it is now. First Methodist Church of Covington was built in 1854. It's a Greek revival church. Hallelujah, Euripides. I didn't know if I would play here. I'm glad here. But it is. It's a big old place. The back of the church, when you're in the congregation area where the pews are, the back of the church is raked, which means it's higher in the back than in the front. Theater kids, who's a theater person? Okay. In case you didn't know that, in the olden days, the stages themselves were slanted. It was higher in the back and lower in the front. That's why we say upstage and downstage. Everybody go, oh. Well, the church itself was raked. The floor was pine, not oak. The old pews. My family was the 7th pew from the front. And our family had been in that church ever since it was built. The church was founded in 1822. This is the 1854 building. Right there, that was our pew, man. Every time. Everybody knew that was our pew. I could see in the pine floor, I could see the heel marks of my foremothers. So what I did was, Methodists, we go down and we kneel at the chancel rail when we have communion. So I took the cushion on which we knelt, that was, on that little shelf, and I put it perpendicular on the floor, and I sprinkled powder all under the pews. And I was inspired by the Olympics, the Summer Olympics. It was a joke we used to tell. How do you fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool? I don't know. How do you? I don't know. Mark Spitz. That was funny in 1972. Let me tell you something. All right. So we were going to do backstrokes, right? So I told Brazel, this is what you do, man. This is what you do. You grab onto the pew, you lay down, and you kick off from the wall. When I say 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go. And we grabbed the pews and we propelled ourselves on the pews. And whose head hit the cushion first wins. This is why I have neck issues to this day. And then we cleaned it up. And then nobody saw us. And then Mrs. Kellum and the rest of the people came in. So we got away with it. The next weekend, we weren't in church because we were on a Boy Scout campout. There's a term in my faith tradition for if you are fallen away from the church. And it's noticeable when you don't attend church. And there's a word I remember hearing. The week after Brazel and I weren't there, which was the week after that Wednesday that we played the game with the baby powder, Aunt Marguerite saw us after church. She walked right over to her. Andy, Brazel, y'all been backsliding. How did she know?
Thanks for joining us for a little story from the Appleseed.